Welcome to the talk show, Lighting the Educational Flame, with your host, Mark Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields and academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the talk show, Lighting the Educational Flame, brought to you by Great Success Education. I'm your host, Mark Hoberman. Today, our guest is international best-selling author and business consultant, Dr. Kas Henry. Kas, welcome to Lighting the Educational Flame.
Thank you so very much, Mark. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thanks so much. It's always great to have you. So, Kas, let's start off right away with the key word. We know that in today's times, resiliency is needed more than ever. Is resiliency something you can learn?
Definitely. Resiliency is something we learn and we modify and we align as we go. There are two things about us that is set in stone. One is our personality and the other is our IQ. Resiliency is directly correlated to our EQ, our emotional intelligence and emotional quotient. And that is the only thing in a human life that we can learn. So definitely resiliency is something we learn, but we continually evolve as well. It's not learned once and done and gone. It's a continuous process and it's an evolution.
Excellent. And I know that resiliency, when it comes to certain struggles in life, is most important. And I know in your book, Ennobled for Success, there are many struggles in your life where you needed to be resilient just in order to survive. Forget about succeed, just survive. Can you tell us about some of those experiences?
Sure. So I was born in the middle of a civil war where in my own country, I became a persecuted minority because we were a minority. Just like most of the world, when the European colonial masters left, they had already created sufficient conflict within the populations that lived in the nations. And what they did with Sri Lanka, which is where I'm from, they took a 3-nation island and left it as a single nation. They did the polar opposite with India, right? Took one nation and left it as 3 nations. So when they carved out an entire nation out of 3 nations, the part of the population that owned 2/3 of the land and property and everything became a minority because it's natural for affluent populations to reproduce less. So we were the educated, affluent, economically empowered minority. And when the new government came into place, they actually abolished English education and made their language official language and made compulsory mother tongue education. So we were isolated and their whole approach was to make it economically non-viable for the minority. But because we had grown up in the British system with English education and our parents were highly educated, we continued to get educated and parents send the children outside to get English education. So part of the resiliency came from truly understanding what other people are trying to do to us and not letting that determine our future, but how do we take the environment in its current state and how do we navigate that so that we can be successful? So growing up as a child, I was intentionally raised and I prepared myself to be the matriarch of the family. By the time I was 10, I could run a household because in the middle of a civil war, you never knew when the mother would get killed, right? And we're a matriarchal society. Children do not take a father's name. A wife does not take a husband's name. Nobody's anybody's property. And traditionally, before the European colony, we took multiple husbands. So we're a polyandry society where woman is the head of the household and the first elected female head of state in the entire world came from Sri Lanka in 1960. So we're a different culture, but at the same time, that matriarchal society allowed us the opportunity for mother to daughter, women to women, ennoble other women and help children become the matriarch if the need arises. So I was raised in that culture. I went to a Montessori school at the age of 2.5. So we were taught experiential learning. How do you learn from experience? Math was taught through cooking, right? We bake cookies, but we double the recipe, triple the recipe. So we do math. Everything was experiential. So learning itself was ingrained at a very young age to make it a resiliency building process, because we were taught how to learn. We were not taught content, right? So all of these building blocks helped us. And as I became a refugee in my 8th grade, with the country going to hell in a handbasket, so to speak, we had to move to a different place. We had to dress like Muslim people, take the train in the dark of night, move to a different city, and walk to school 7 miles one way to go to school. All of these things were part and parcel of how we grew up. And when it's life or death, you really don't get to wonder, why is this happening to me? Because if you stop to wonder that, then the next thing you know is you've been shot or killed, or even worse. I don't want to say on a recorded show that children might be listening, all the horrendous things human beings can do to human beings.
Absolutely.
So I grew up realizing, as long as people cared about each other, regardless of what the governments did, regardless of what the people in power did, people can help people. And as long as we decided we were going to let our humanity reign, then everything else will fall into place. So in the Ennobled for Success international #1 bestseller, I talk about how other people make this life possible and how other people have made me ennobled, giving me the ability to be resilient, to be kind, compassionate, right? Live with grace and take risks in measured ways. These are not things we're born with, but other people help us build this. And all these together is what gives resiliency. So be it in Sri Lanka in the middle of a war, I moved to India as a 16-year-old, raised my siblings without parents in a foreign country with switching languages from learning in Tamil to learning in English. All of this was possible because I was comfortable in being vulnerable and telling people, I don't understand what you're saying, but keep talking, I will figure it out, right? And people gave me that respect and allowed me to learn my own way. And they allowed me and held space for me to build my resiliency at my pace, the way I needed to work for me. And in that process, I learned so much about myself and I learned so much about humanity. So I bring that into the workplace today as a business executive and a business. I have my own company. I work with companies like Berkshire Hathaway and consult for Warren Buffett. But I am able to bring all of that into the workplace. But wouldn't happen if people didn't hold space for me and give me that chance to learn and grow.
Absolutely. Amazing story. And I have to ask you, you mentioned language a couple of times. So I remember back when I taught in the Bronx 30 something years ago, parents would have to come to, immigrants who came to the United States would come to parent teacher nights, and the kids kind of had the control because the kids had to interpret, and the kids had more control of the English language than their parents. I'm talking 12 and 13-year-old children here. And I know that knowing many languages is great for business, but I know that you speak a lot about the many languages you learned as a young person. And obviously at that point in time in your life, it wasn't for business reasons. Mm-hmm. So walk us through that aspect of why language has been so important in your life and helped to build your resiliency.
That is such a wonderful question. I believe language is culture. And when you learn a language, an entire world of culture and cultural symbolisms and philosophies open up to you. And I am privileged to read, write, and speak as my mother tongue, a language that is more than 6,000 years old. It's one of the oldest languages, the oldest written and spoken language in the world today. And I have access to history and philosophy and science. And there is historical references to planes that were there in the pre-modern scientific age. So coming from that culture, the Hinduism, the Tamil culture, that richness is there. Now, I was also raised in a country where they had made Sinhalese only the official language. Sinhalese comes from Pali and Sanskrit. It's a North Indian language, which is an Aryan derivative. So learning that language, it's a different script. The writing is different. It's not just same letters, but it's spoken differently. It's the actual scripts are different. So learning that was necessary for survival. Road signs, bus signs, registering birth, going and filing any documentation in schools, in educational regulatory bodies, all of that is in that language. Learning that language was necessary to navigate life, but in the middle of the Civil War, it became necessary for survival. They would stop kids from going to school and check our IDs. And if you were a minority kid, they'll shoot you and put you on top of tires and burn the tires. That was how we went to school. We never knew if we would come home. So we would even avoid taking buses. We will take the bus money and go to the peanut shop and buy peanuts and then talk to each other and sing and walk along the beach. The joy of living on an island, right? So we found ways to be creative and take the sadness and horrendousness and turn it into something joyful and fun and play, because otherwise the child's mind cannot process it, right? So we approached it from the perspective, we're going to have fun. If we're going to get killed, that's okay. But for every moment we live, we're going to have fun. And my parents were educated when we were a British colony. So their native tongue, for all intents and purposes, were English. So they couldn't help us with school. They did math and physics and chemistry and everything in English. And my mom was a professor and she taught in English. Once you get to university, it's English. So here we were teaching ourselves and doing our homework with our parental help because our parents didn't speak the language the local country wanted. Then we also learned English as a third language in school. So culturally, we were trilingual growing up. And we felt that because we were going to be eventually leaving the country given the war, my younger brother and I, the two middle children, we actually went and registered to learn French. So if he and I were together and somebody stopped us to frisk us, raid us, kill us, so we had this entire stick. We burst into French. We didn't care if it was French or not, as long as it sounded French, because the rest of the Sri Lankans didn't know what language it was. As long as we sounded like foreigners, they'll leave us alone, right? So it became a very tongue-in-cheek way to playfully address the need to survive. And then when I went to India, and I lived in India for 5 years for my high school and my undergraduate degree, I lived in Bangalore, India, where the language was Kannada. South Asian languages, South Indian languages come from Tamil. They're all Dravidian languages. The race is Dravidian from South Asia and South India all the way to Thailand is all Dravidian. We all have the same New Year, April, and all the languages come from mine. So once I know my language, which is like Latin to the Western languages, I can learn the other languages. So I learned Kannada, I learned Malayalam, I can understand a little Telugu, and then I spoke Tamil. So those are the 4 languages in the 4 states of South India. So I was able to be proficient. And then as an adult, as I'm consulting for international companies and I'm traveling to Spain and Italy and Germany and Latin America and Brazil, I am able to pick up languages because I am naturally inclined to hear sounds and verbalize it. And therefore it becomes easier as an adult for me to speak the languages. So what started as a survival mechanism now has become a thriving tool from a business and social life perspective.
Well, it's great that you were able to move into that, but we can't lose sight of the fact that this language power that you had and these struggles were through the eyes of a child. And we talk about struggles we have now as adults, and I know you're working on a new book about bridging the gap from struggles and helping people build resiliency from all ages, all aspects of life, school, work, things of that nature. So I did hear from the grapevine that you have this other book is coming out in July. So first of all, who is the target audience for this book? And please let our viewers know the surprise announcement about your co-author, since it might be a name that some of our viewers could be familiar with.
Yes, I'm glad you asked, Mark. So I'm going to start with my co-author. My co-author is your esteemed host here, Mark Hoberman.
Oh, thank you.
It has been a great honor and pleasure to actually bring this book forward. And the book is expected to launch in the summer of 2021, July. And the book's premise is about how are we going to help individuals understand what are the challenges they're facing? How do we help them take those challenges and break it into manageable chunks from different perspectives. And then how do we help them develop a playbook? Just like on sports teams, we have people playing different positions, and together the coach teaches you how to play different ways. And as you prepare to play another team, oh, here is how that team plays, therefore here is how you need to show up. Here is how the next team plays, here is how you should show up. In that same cadence, we are helping people build playbooks so that they can show up in their personal life at home, in school, whether they are students or their parents, right? Adult students going to universities or parents sending their children to school, in workplaces as professionals or tradespeople, as well as members in society. How do we show up? And how do we show up in a way that we are comfortable talking about the challenges we have, of being vulnerable and embracing people and bringing them into the fold to truly be part of our transformational process of building resiliency? Because life is a team sport. Let's face it, no matter how much in some cultures we say individualism matters more than collectivism, we don't come into this world alone. We don't leave this world alone. We don't do anything in this world alone. Other people facilitate it, right? To say that once I have money, everything will be fine. No, money is not going to grow your vegetables and fruit. It's not going to raise the cattle and the animals that you like to eat for non-veg. It's not going to, build your roads. It actually takes people. People do these things. So if I'm going to work with people and my life success depends on people, how do I embrace them and how do I make them part of my resiliency process? And the blueprint actually walks you through and helps you build a support system around you so that when you take off with your life and with your purpose, there is that structure around you to help you be resilient on a continuous basis, and you being there for other people for their resiliency. And together, then you can build your purposeful life and become economically successful, among other things.
Oh, excellent response. And also, when you speak about your philosophy or definition of team, we've talked about this before, that a team consisting of two people, one who looks like you and has your background with struggles, and one who looks like me and who have had my background of struggles. Mine is steeped in a medical diagnosis, but working together, it was easy for us to come up with this plan because it came from experience, not just from reading, but experience. So what was it like for you? You have an international bestseller that you wrote alone, and now you're working with someone else, me, in writing the Resiliency Playbook. What was that process like for you?
I think the first important thing was to understand what your perspective and where you are coming from and what your strengths were. And then looking at where I was coming from, what I was bringing to the table, and what my strengths were. So what I realized early on is, being a career educator, you were very comfortable in taking an outline and then filling in the gaps to tell the stories, right? Because that's how we write curriculum. So because I work in the business world and run as a CEO, run my own international consulting firm, and I'm also a graduate school professor. So I am used to the writing the curriculum and building the content when somebody else gives me the curriculum. So I took that approach, but then brought my business and strategy background to formulating the outline and the structure. So once I figured out how best we can work, first we established that there was a deep respect and trust. And that was a chance meeting. We were, in a way, very blessed to be introduced by the right person at the right time for this to come about. But once I knew that we could write a book together and you were open to it, then the rest to me came naturally. I figured if I write an outline and then talk through the outline, then you can tell me, Kas, what if we add this? What if we add that? So the outline can be refined. And then we look at, okay, where are the models going? Where are the tables and the structure going from strategy? And then where do we fill in the gaps to tell people the story and walk them through, because the schedules alone is not going to tell the story, right? That sounds like a very scientific exercise without explanation. So the explanation is very important. And then we were able to figure out whose strength is this section, whose strength is that section. And then we wrote, and then as we read each other's work and we edited, now you can't tell who wrote what.
Exactly. Yeah, you really, as I said before, I read chapters and said, well, this is a good chapter. Cass has really nailed it. And it was my chapter, and vice versa. And, the structure was important, because it's hard enough to structure a story on your own. But to be honest, we had a lot of experience and a wealth of knowledge, and some of it unfortunate knowledge with struggles that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's your story, it almost becomes, for lack of a better term, verbal diarrhea, because it keeps coming out so much. And the structure that you put in place made it easier to tell our stories and to help others. And you mentioned a couple of things that resonated with me when you talk about your success in the corporate world. So it's hard enough to succeed in a corporate world that's male dominated, or any female. Now it's a female who's from another country. Now it's a female who's coming in and teaching other corporate executives and people how to succeed. So you went from down here to way up there. But what obstacles do you think you needed to overcome as a female in a male dominated corporate world? Because you obviously overcame them. That doesn't happen overnight.
I'm glad you asked that question, Mark, because I come from Sri Lanka, where a woman's role is not subservient to a man, and I'm a Hindu by faith. We have goddesses, and our god is half male, half female. So we were raised to believe that woman has an equal but different place alongside a man. I never grew up thinking I was a woman. I always felt that I was a person. So when I came into America, I came in with a computer science, math, physics, triple major undergraduate degree, and 2 language literatures, Tamil and English. So I was well read in the philosophies and the literatures, and I was the first batch of technology students to graduate from Bangalore University. And I entered the world of fintech to automate the technology in a British banking system. So I came in as a working adult with the financial technology background, with the language skills. So I had something most Americans did not have, plus the international experience. So at the age of 32, I came into this country at 27, finished my MBA at 29. By 52, I was a CFO for a division of a major Fortune 500 company. That happened not because I was a female, not because I was anything. It was my financial experience and my expertise, my technology capabilities, and my ability to influence people to drive change, right? So they're soft and hard skills, but learned through a experiential, resilient life. And it's funny, when they gave me the job offer, it said Mr. Henry Kasturi. And when I had registered for health insurance, they denied coverage for my husband those days, because they said, unfortunately, we're not enrolling same-sex domestic partners. I'm like, I'm not a dude, right? That's the first time I realized I need to tell people I'm a woman, right? So now when forms are given, I make sure I say doctor, and in parentheses put Mrs., right? But other than that, I have never played the gender card. My belief is that if I show up as a professional who doesn't project color or race or ethnicity or gender, then after a while, everybody will start treating me the way I show up.
Excellent.
And when I was first a CFO, and all the guys during a bathroom break would continue the meeting in the bathroom, I would actually knock on the door. American bathrooms, you can hear, right? I will knock and say, either stop talking or I am coming in, because if it's still a business meeting, I need to be there. I'm your CFO, right? And I think they were so terrified, they really thought I would walk in. I would never, but that was, I was tongue in cheek. I was half joking, half serious,
right.
But I had to find a way to break them of their habit. It was not a wrong thing for them, because it was all a group of men before.
Right.
So a lot of times people tend to do things not realizing that it's not okay. But if I don't get angry about it and I joke about it and I gently point out, most of the time people are willing to change. And my career happened because of a lot of older white men were willing to facilitate my passion and my purpose and not stop me, but lift me up.
Well, it's interesting because you bring up a good point. You make the shift from it doesn't matter who shows up, it matters how that person shows up. And just that sentence alone, that should be given to somebody on a little index card as they take the stage.
Yes, you're the English teacher, right? Remember in Hamlet, they talk about how you treat other people is a reflection of your status in life, your station in life. So I always say, people ask me, why are you so good and kind to people who are mean to you? How I show up is a reflection of who I am. How they show up, they own it.
Right.
And I'd rather kill people with kindness and professionalism and gentleness than become something untoward, because then I have become something less than.
Absolutely. And this philosophy permeates through your podcast, Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks. So how does that show connect with the Resiliency Playbook?
Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks is about helping people understand the importance of coming from a place of centeredness. In life, people tend to think that I have to take an extreme position and my way or the highway, especially in a Western world where individualism is held above all else. But when I think about what needs to happen for democracy to survive, what needs to happen for a thriving community and a society to be built, it's not about your way or my way. It's about how can we meet somewhere in the middle. And in the business world, we call it optimization, right? How do we make sure that all aspects of the business are growing at the same time instead of sales or marketing or engineering or innovation? So that optimization, how do we bring that to real world? Because in the United States, for example, compromise is a bad word. Optimization and compromisation is the same thing, right? So we've taken perfectly good words and given them a negative connotation and created false dichotomies. Ennoble for Success intends to walk away from that and show people the value of coming from that centeredness so that we can each influence 3 levels from where we are. So if we come from the center, we can influence 3 levels to the right, 3 levels to the left, and everybody else in the center. So now we have taken 3 degrees of influence and optimized it to 7 degrees. Smart people work smart. They don't need to work hard, right? It's the dumb people who have to work very, very hard. So I'm like, okay, how do we teach these things to individuals and help them seek their own success, and in the process, build an international community that is inclusive, that is more centered, that is more compassionate, that is more kind. And through this journey, truly ennoble as many people as possible for success.
Excellent philosophy and excellent advice. Kas, how can people learn more about you, your show, your books?
They can definitely visit my website, www.kashenry.com. And on the site are different sections where you can learn about the Ennoble for Success Institute and the educational programs we offer. You can learn about the podcast. You can learn about how, as a business person, you can pivot your business and rejigger your business to meet the real world problems. So we do business consulting and business and personal coaching. So all of these are available at www.kashenry.com. And you can find me on social media. I have a very unique name, Kasturi Henry. And if you Google my name, my Facebook, my LinkedIn, everything comes up. So Dr. Kasturi Henry is all you need to know to find me on social media.
Kas, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your incredible journey with us from childhood to where you are now. I want to remind the viewers to remember to reach out to us on social media. Look for Great Success on Facebook and Twitter. We would love to hear from you. You can also find me, Mark Hoberman, on LinkedIn. You can also go to educationalflame.com. Again, thanks to Dr. Kas Henry for being with us today. Viewers, don't forget to tune in to our next show. This is Mark Hoberman thanking you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame. Have a great day. Thanks, Kas.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame. To contact Mark Hoberman, email him at info@greatsuccess.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Lighting the Educational Flame.